Greetings all, Professor Vincent here, and I am going to walk you through a brief video tutorial for critical reading. That is, the process of annotating a text as you read in order to better understand and retain the information that that reading contains within it. Normally, I would have my face visible during a video of this kind, but since I'm modeling a process, this is more of a tutorial than an example of class notes. I figured it'd be best to devote the entire screen to the tutorial and not to my face hovering awkwardly in the corner in a little inset screen. By the time you view this video tutorial, you should have already perused our class notes on critical reading and annotation practices. As a result, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over each of those techniques. Instead, I'm going to assume that you know what those techniques are and that you are at least prepared to see me use them and to take notes as you do. Before we get started, I want to ask a question. You don't have to answer, you won't be turning an answer of any kind in, but in your notes, I'd like you to jot down an answer to the following question. When you're assigned a reading for a class, what do you do to ensure that you will remember that reading and to ensure that you will understand what that reading is trying to say? Take a moment, pause the video, and jot down an answer. Welcome back. If you're anything like me, your answer to that question is probably that you just read through the text and that you maybe take notes on a separate sheet of paper. This is understandable. When I was a freshman student, I also was not exactly eager to write notes in the margins of my textbooks. Through high school, I had been taught that textbooks are expensive and they aren't my personal property, so I shouldn't be writing in them because that damaged them for future students. And it took me a long time, and it took several professors trying to sort of drive the idea into my head that it's okay to write in the textbook because I own it, and because unless I damage it pretty significantly, the bookstore is going to give me the same price when I sell it back to them, pretty much regardless. So it does pay to annotate your textbooks and your course readings, especially because a lot of the readings in this course are digital. Speaking of readings, you may notice a reading on the screen in front of you. This is David Bartholomew's Inventing the University, which is one of our class readings for the course. In the next few weeks, you will read, annotate, discuss, and then write a full essay about this particular reading. So, I'm going to use it to demonstrate a bit of critical reading practice so that you can see what annotating a text looks like, or at least what a fully annotated text looks like. I'm going to read through the epigraph, that's this little quote that's on screen right now, and the first paragraph, annotating as I go. I'm going to use my personal annotation process, which is to highlight, make comments, and to define words that I'm not very familiar with as I go. Oh, and I'm going to use this particular process because it's the one that's most comfortable to me. There's no best annotation practice. Instead, annotation and critical reading in general are deeply personal processes that we build for ourselves and that we refine over time. The only wrong way to read critically is to not do it at all. The only bad form of annotation is no annotation. For this course, I'm going to expect you to annotate, but there's not a particular structure that I'm going to be looking for. I just need to see that those annotations are substantial, that they are there, and that it's more than simply a few randomly highlighted words. So, let's get started. Starting from the quote here, "Education may well be, as of right, the instrument whereby every individual in a society like our own can gain access to any kind of discourse. But we well know that in its distribution, in what it permits and what it prevents, it follows the well-trodden battle lines of social conflict. Every educational system is a political means of maintaining or modifying the appropriation of discourse with the knowledge and powers it carries with it." If you had a little bit of trouble understanding that, don't worry. That was written by Michel Foucault, and Michel Foucault is pretty difficult to understand. Since this is a bit of a difficult to understand passage, my first instinct here is to highlight a couple of sections and translate them into a more approachable language. So I'll highlight the text in question, select the highlight feature on my PDF program, and then make a comment. I'll simplify this as education is gaining access to a discourse. And if you're unfamiliar with what discourse is and why I'm not necessarily defining it right here, don't worry, that's because we are going to have an entire class period about discourse as a subject, so I'm trying not to get ahead of us. I'm also going to highlight this, saying that education also controls access to discourse. This way, I'm not only writing down my thoughts and translating the content that I'm reading, which studies show makes me more likely to retain that information, to remember it, I'm also making preparation for when I revisit this essay, this essay for essay number 1. When we get to essay number 1, you're going to have to use evidence from this essay, from Bartholomew's essay, as evidence of your own opinions. So by highlighting this, I'm potentially finding quotes for myself before I even get around to writing the essay. It'll save me time later. Let's get into the paragraph. Every time a student sits down to write for us, he has to invent the university for the occasion. Invent the university, that is, or a branch of it, like history, or anthropology, or economics, or English. If you're like me, you probably paused here. And you probably would highlight this, because Bartholomew, I'm going to abbreviate his name here, is title dropping. He's mentioning the title of his essay in the body of his essay, and that usually means that the title itself is important, and that the title drop, the place where he mentions it, is also very important. To continue, he has to learn to speak our language, to speak as we do, to try on the peculiar ways of knowing, selecting, evaluating, reporting, concluding, and arguing that define the discourse of our community. Oh, well, Bartholomew is defining what he means by inventing the university here. Since he's providing us with a definition, I'm going to highlight this and make a note. Anytime an author is defining something for you, especially a term that they themselves seem to have created like Bartholomew has, it's best to highlight, underline, or otherwise label that definition, because that definition will, 1, be helpful in understanding the rest of the reading, and 2, be extremely helpful to you as you write an essay about that reading. So, I'm going to highlight this and write down that this is a definition. To continue, Or perhaps I should say the various discourses of our community, since it is in the nature of a liberal arts education that a student, after the first year or two, must learn to try on a variety of voices and interpretive schemes. To write, for example, as a literary critic one day, and an experimental psychologist the next. To work within fields where the rules governing the presentation of examples or the development of an argument are both distinct and, even to a professional, mysterious. I'm going to highlight this last point here, because to me, this feels like Bartholomew's thesis. This feels like his main point. The point that he is going to spend the rest of the essay trying to prove to us. I'm going to label it as his thesis, and if I'm not sure what he means here, I'm going to write down what I think this thesis is saying. Because I've read this a bunch of times, I know what Bartholomew is trying to say here. But if this is your first time reading through this essay, think about exactly what it is that Bartholomew is trying to communicate in this particular sentence. What is it he is trying to prove to us? That's it for this video, basically. You can see now what an annotated paragraph or two looks like. I've only made 3 annotations here because, for one, it's a pretty short paragraph, and for 2, I don't want to crowd the page too much. If there's more highlighted text than unhighlighted text, that highlighted text isn't really doing very much for me as a reader. However, if I limit the number of highlights, underlines, or other annotations to things that I specifically think are important, then not only will I be more likely to remember that information, I'll also have an easier time finding that information as I read through this paper, perhaps a second time if I didn't quite understand it, but certainly I'll find it easier to locate important information as I work on essay number 2, the opinion paper. So now you've seen what annotating a text kind of looks like. Again, I don't expect you all to have a massively highlighted page with numerous annotations, notes, or definitions, but I do expect your annotations to be fairly substantial. There should definitely be more than 2 or 3 annotations per page, and those annotations should be substantive as well. They should draw the reader's attention to important information. My goal here isn't to give you busy work, it's to provide you with a skill that I think is particularly valuable as you move through college, one that I wish I had been more responsible about doing when I was a student like you. That's it. Thanks for watching. This has been our video tutorial on critical reading. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Canvas channel for more great educational content like this.